I think part of what helps these conversations go down easier is like we're able to have them in a comedy because laughing eases people and it kind of makes the medicine go down easier, you know? And so I think if you do find yourself having the conversation with someone and it gets, oh man, their perspective is different, I think trying to maintain the lightest possible tone, the way the show does with like being a comedy, it just keeps everyone at ease. I think like Lucia was saying, like people get defensive so fast when they feel their beliefs are being attacked or they feel they're being told they're wrong or that they've done something wrong. And that I think once those, defensiveness goes up in so many ways, it stops allowing things to be heard and then change can't really happen. And so I think that is what we try to do with the show. It's a comedy, and I think letting people laugh and having people laugh makes the message get heard a little easier. And I think that can be applied to real life as well.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And so in the next episode, which also dropped this morning, episode 6, we see another really great example of why comedy is a great vehicle for socially conscious writing. Deborah participates in a charity golf tournament while trying to win over network decision makers, and Ava agrees to be her caddy to learn how to be one of the people. And at the end of that episode, I won't spoil anything, but they have like a really nice conversation about how important it is to just try. Even though you're not always going to be, the best version of yourself. And then later in the season, when Ava tries to explain to Deborah why some of her past jokes might be offensive or hurtful to some people, Deborah responds very earnestly, "I can't be woke, I'm exhausted." So there's this sort of back and forth between when Ava can reach her and when they can have these more earnest conversations. And I'm curious when you determine the moments in which Deborah will be willing to be more socially conscious, but while remaining true to herself.
It's definitely something that's tested this season, especially in the episode that you're referring to where her material kind of comes back to haunt her. And I think that the reason that she is especially so hesitant in that moment is because the stakes are so high. She's really trying to get this late night job. And it just feels like her dream is at her fingertips. And so for this to come back and haunt her, I think she's especially like, oh, but that's tested throughout the rest of the season, really, just like how much has Deborah grown, how much is she willing to live out that growth, and when does she think that's just too much, I need to go back to the safe thing. And that's something that like I think there's no rhyme or reason for us in storytelling of like what we think is too far or not enough. I think it's just kind of like based on where we feel that she is in terms of character growth and development in any given moment.
And also I would add, like, Deborah is her career is the most important thing to her. And I think whenever she is closer, like whenever her career and career goals are being threatened, that is when I think she is less likely to be vulnerable and do the right thing. Like if you think of the end of season 2, it's sorry, spoiler if you haven't seen it. But she lets Ava go, and it is this mostly benevolent thing, but it's also she's at a career high. She's just had this amazing special and sold it out on QVC, and she's feeling really good. And I think when we see her act in her worst, maybe indulge her worst impulses, it is in the moments when she feels her things she wants are being threatened and her back is up against the wall, which is an interesting thing because it's being a good person. And this is something we talk about a lot, like being a good person is hard no matter what, like Ava says in that at the end of episode 6, but it's really like being a good person when things are going well for you is easier than when you have something to lose. And that's what we're also trying to explore.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the two of you have written extraordinary and unique female characters throughout your career. HACKS pushes the boundaries of what we typically see and hear women do on television. You're never afraid to show their flaws, moral gray areas, sexuality, unique quirks, which makes them all the more relatable. I'm curious if you've encountered any challenges in this regard, and if there's anything in particular that you put on screen where you were worried about how the audience might react.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's things that were like, oh God, is the audience going to be mad at us for doing X, Y, or Z thing? But I think that's like the goal is that like you earn it. Like that's how you know you're doing hopefully your job is you're like, okay, well, if I'm worried about that, how can I go back and figure out a way to make sure this feels justified, that feels relatable, that it feels like it's the right choice. And also not completely being so worried about it. Like, I think that's also something that we're coming to terms with, is really being like, some people are going to love this, some people are not going to love this, but we like it, so that's what we're going to do. And not being so like concerned with anybody's,
there's like not to sound too, it's like there's like courage in storytelling sometimes, of when you're like, oh no, will people not like this? But you're like, but that's what she would do.
Yeah.
Like that happens a lot. But like Lucia is saying, there, it's an interesting thing of making TV and film and just anything in this era, is that you can get immediate feedback on it, and which is hard, and we both struggle with it and learning to deal with it. But like season 1, for example, I think this has been well covered. Like before the show came out, I think Deborah did some things that we were like, oh no, will this be unsavory to an audience? And then actually the very opposite happened, which is people had a way more negative reaction to Ava and her character, even though her character was very purposefully drawn to be kind of self-obsessed and obsessed with her career, and have honest parallels to Deborah. And yet, for whatever reason, that people were way more forgiving of it in Deborah than Ava. And so that was like an interesting experience of seeing the show reflected back to us and wondering why that was the reaction. And I still don't totally know. Maybe I'll never know. But that was interesting because it was very obvious to us that it was done on purpose, but I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know.
We were like, this behavior from Deborah is kind of unforgivable, and people are like, forgive her, queen. Stomp on your neck. We're like, all right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about some of the secondary characters on the show. So Kayla, who started out as Jimmy's assistant when they were working at Latitude, has a really great arc this season. I won't get into it too much, but at the end of season 2, Jimmy leaves Latitude to go out on his own, and Kayla joins him, and it's just the two of them on this journey now through the season. So she has some great moments, including setting up a general meeting that turns out to be a pickleball match. How early did you plan out Kayla's evolution from sort of more of a comic relief character to a really key member of Deborah's team?
Well, yeah, I think we also tried, to do that in season 2, and you kind of had that scene with when they worked on the weekend, where Kayla was like, saying that she feels like a fuck up, and Jimmy kind of consoles her. So I think we've been aiming to develop that character more and that relationship more, because I think that's the kind of sneaky thing, is people are always like, oh my God, Kayla is so funny. It's so funny. But like, that only works because Jimmy can be the straight man, but also be funny in equal measure. And like, I'm not trying to like defend my husband or whatever, but like,
but he's like the voice of reason.
But it is also the harder part to play, is the one that is like the straight man who also gets to also do jokes at the same time while balancing something out. Like, Meg is a brilliant performer, but she's such a like live wire that, now, I'm not saying it's easier, but it's just like a little bit more of a, it's like a little bit more of a,
it's a subtle job that isn't always like as, I don't know, it's harder to grasp or something.
Yeah, you don't understand the difficulty of that sometimes.
Yeah.
I think so. Anyways, their relationship in general, that was a tangent. I said I did tangents before we started. But like the Kayla and Jimmy thing, like, I think we just kind of were like, especially in having a season where they need to really team up and get a lot done. We were like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what is Jimmy's part in that? What is Kayla's part in that? And I think we wanted to kind of say something I think we actually do think is kind of true in Hollywood, that like sometimes really good managers are like the buttoned up ones who return emails and make sure people are on whatever. And then sometimes there are people who are like kind of nuts and weird, but like weirdly have bizarro genius, And so I think that that's who they both are as managers, and they work well together.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think part of the goal in grounding Kayla's character with this backstory and exploring that more, and then also giving her Paul as this wonderful straight man, is that the tone of the show of Hacks, like obviously it's a comedy and we're always first and foremost trying to make people laugh, but we also have, always wanted to feel grounded and real. And, Gene and Hannah are so like dramatically gifted, and we do some like really heavy stuff. And so, we always want the comedy of Kayla too to feel like it lives correctly in the tone and world of the show. And so I think that's why it's also really important to develop her as a real person, and also have Jimmy's character kind of ground her and bring her to earth.
Makes a ton of sense. So I have one more question before we move to audience Q&A. So I've worked as an assistant to both executives and showrunners, and one of the first things I noticed about Hacks was just how accurately the industry is depicted, both in terms of how people treat each other and what's expected of them. It's just really, really on point. And so I'm curious, how do you work with the other writers to portray the industry in a way that seems both completely absurd, but also extremely realistic? Were there any particular experiences that shaped this?
Well, I think we are always hearing about like what networks are looking for right now, and it's always the most. Some of those are quotes, some of those are real, and some of them are not real. Just to give you of the Jimmy run and episode.
One of the ones that you said, a friend of mine texted me like a week or a few days after I watched the episode, and I was like, "That's what they said on Hacks." Like it was literally something from the upfronts was from the show.
Right. It's honestly like, yeah, like Lucia is saying, it's just some very real stuff that we and our writers have observed, for better or worse. And yeah, just like all of our lived experiences being here. But I think, and I hope the show does this, you know, the industry is challenging and hard, and there's lots of things to poke fun at it about. But we also try to hope that the show is never, you know, I think it's a little bit easier to make a show about the industry where you're saying like, oh, isn't everything so stupid and dumb, and everyone who wants to succeed in this is silly and an idiot. And the thing is, if you make a show saying that, the thing is but you work in it, you do it. You're choosing to spend your one life on earth doing it too.
And you're lucky to do it.
And you're lucky to do it. And like this is a privilege to get to do it. Yes, there's so much foolishness that goes on, and as we become more tied to corporations, Ava talking, it becomes more and more further away maybe from the art form. However, at the end of the day, we want to make a show about the joy of making things and creative collaboration, and how lucky you are to get to make things with people you love and just to put things out into the world. It is a privilege to get to have the things and our ideas put out into the world. And so I hope that it is an accurate depiction of the industry, but I hope at the end of the day, it is saying, yes, these things are absurd. Yes, these things are silly and can drive you mad, but you have to like be kind of at your core, still loving what the root of it is, which is like telling stories and connecting with them.